On this week's Vaticano, be part of the opening ceremony of the Holy Year of Mercy. Pope Francis opens the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica in a grand ceremony on the feast of the Immaculate Conception. We take a look back at the Pope's visit to Africa through the eyes of a Kenyan. The milestone encyclical of Benedict XVI, Deus Caritas Est, is celebrated in Rome 10 years after its publication, and Pope Francis lights a Christmas scene in Assisi. From Rome. All this and more now on Vaticano. The Holy Year of Mercy was officially opened on December the 8th in Rome. Pope Francis led this festive ceremony that consisted of a solemn Mass and the opening of the Holy Door of Rome's central basilica, St. Peter's. In his homily, Pope Francis voiced his hopes for the year ahead.
This extraordinary year itself is a gift of grace. To pass through the holy doors means to rediscover the infinite mercy of the Father, who welcomes everyone and goes out personally to encounter each of them. It is He who seeks us. It is He who comes to encounter us. This will be a year in which we grow ever more convinced of God's mercy.
Nella convinzione della misericordia.
He also connected the Holy Door with Mary, Mother of God, whose feast of her Immaculate Conception fell on the same day.
The feast of the Immaculate Conception expresses the grandeur of God's love. Not only does He forgive sin, but in Mary He even averts the original sin present in every man and woman who comes into this world. This is the love of God which precedes, anticipates, and saves. The beginning of the history of sin in the Garden of Eden yields to a plan of saving love. The words of Genesis reflect our own daily experience. We're constantly tempted to disobedience, a disobedience expressed in wanting to go about our lives without regarding for God's will.
Pilgrims who pass through the door, which is only open during Jubilee years, can receive a plenary indulgence under the usual conditions. Pope Francis presided over the rite of the Holy Door's opening before passing through himself. He was followed by the now retired Benedict XVI, who attended the rite in one of his rare public appearances. In the afternoon, Pope Francis went to Rome's Spanish Steps in the Spanish Square to lay flowers at the base of Mary's column, a tradition which has been in place since the 1950s. With dusk, the day closed for the Pope, but the Holy Year continues for more than 11 months and gives every Catholic in the world an added awareness of God's mercy in his life. In his Angelus address on Sunday, December the 6th, in reference to the day's Gospel reading, Pope Francis spoke of the last prophet of the Old Testament, St. John the Baptist, and the relevance of his message today.
The voice of the Baptist still cries in humanity's deserts of today, which are... What are the deserts of today? They are the closed minds and the hardened hearts. And his voice calls us so that we ask ourselves if we actually are following the right path, living a life according to the gospel. Today, as then, he admonishes us with the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Prepare the way of the Lord." It is a pressing invitation to open the heart and receive the salvation that God incessantly offers, almost stubbornly, because He wants us all to be free of the slavery of sin.
It was the second Sunday of Advent, and with those words he spoke of what should be our attitude as well in this time of Christmas. Afterwards, Pope Francis remembered 3 newly beatified martyrs in Peru.
Yesterday in Chimbote, Peru, conventional Franciscans Michael Tomaszek and Zbigniew Strzelkowski were beatified. And Alessandro Dordi, a Fide Donum priest assassinated in hatred of the faith in 1991. May these martyrs' fidelity in following Jesus give all of us, especially Christians persecuted in different parts of the world, the strength to give testimony to the gospel with courage.
Testimoniare con coraggio il Vangelo.
On Wednesday, during the general audience, the Pope spoke about the opening of the Holy Year of Mercy.
La Chiesa ha bisogno.
The Church is in need of this extraordinary moment. I do not say this extraordinary moment is good for the Church. I am saying the Church is in need of this extraordinary moment. In our era of profound changes, the Church is called to offer her particular contribution and to make visible signs of the presence of the closeness of God. The Jubilee is a favorable time for us all, because in the contemplation of the divine mercy, which overcomes every human limit, and the mirror of His light in the darkness of sin, we can become more convincing and efficacious testimonies. I want to direct my glance to God, the merciful Father, and the brothers in need of mercy to bring attention to this essential content of the Gospel, Jesus, the mercy that became flesh, who renders visible the great mystery of the triune God.
Grande mistero dell'amore trinitario di Dio.
Pope Francis received the full assembly of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples in audience on December the 3rd. The Pope told the audience of 160 people that their initiatives are vital for transforming the Church from within. The secularized world, indeed, even when it is welcoming towards the gospel values of love, justice, peace, and sobriety, does not show similar openness to the figure of Jesus, said the Pope, adding that it considers him neither the Messiah nor the Son of God. At most, he said, it considers him an enlightened man. It therefore separates the message from the messenger, the gift from the giver. In this situation of separation, he said, the missio ad gentes, the mission to the people, serves as a motor and horizon for faith. The same day, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, received the Prime Minister of the independent Pacific state of Samoa. During the friendly meeting, the parties focused on some aspects of the social and economic life of the country, as well as the valued contribution of the Catholic Church in the island of Samoa, especially in education. This was followed by an exchange on environmental problems that some Pacific Island states must face. Subsequently, he met with the Cardinal Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, to discuss relations between the states further. Pope Francis, on Friday, December the 4th, received the President of the Philippines, Benigno S. Aquino III. They focused on the dialogue among the different parts of Philippine society, as well as the contribution of the Catholic Church in the life of the country. A Vatican press office statement said that particular attention was given to the state of the peace process in Mindanao, in the south of the Philippines. Furthermore, there was an exchange of views on the international and regional situation, especially in reference to the issue of climate change and the COP21 conference that took place at the same time in Paris. In this Vatican press conference, the Archbishop responsible for organizing the extraordinary Holy Year presented this Year of Mercy. The certificate was shown that each pilgrim can obtain by passing through the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica. All who wish to do so must register on the Jubilee's website. During this year, the Pope will have additional audiences and meet with a charitable organization every month. As part of the preparations this year, security measures have been increased to ensure the safety of pilgrims. The year began on December the 8th and will last until November the 20th, 2016. In a December 5th audience with members of the Association of Catholic School Parents, Pope Francis called for the restoration of the educational pact between school and territory, between school and family, between school and civil institutions. The Pope emphasized that Catholic schools should be inclusive, not elitist, and thus open to all. At the same time, he said Catholic schools should focus more on quality rather than on numbers of students. Pope Francis visited the nation of Kenya as the first of 3 countries during his November the 25th to the 30th trip to the African continent. The visit was marked by official political visits, an interfaith discussion with Muslims, and the Pope speaking to the thousands of pilgrims that received him with contagious enthusiasm. 4 Kenyan journalists traveled with Pope Francis on the papal flight. Mark Masai was one of them. He was touched by the message of hope and reconciliation that Pope Francis gave during his time there.
First of all, I feel that I felt that he would start with a general, nice, cozy, warm message. Love, God, loves us, we are all for the church. But then he would go in with a punch, at the end especially. For him to come and actually speak directly at the issues that are facing us. Corruption is a big deal in Kenya. And he spoke directly without holding any punches. And we felt like he spoke for us. We know what authority he holds and respect that comes with his name. And so we felt, yes, someone is speaking for us, and let it be heard. Because when he speaks, people listen.
Kenya is a fairly stable nation, but one that suffers greatly from corruption in its government. Masai said that Pope Francis' voice against this corruption was as important to Kenyans as that of Nelson Mandela, and that his presence in Africa was one of a messenger of peace.
I just feel that it adds to the momentum that is building, whether in Kenya, in the fight against corruption, and even today there was news about one of the ministers who recently resigned, had the Anti-Corruption Commission raid her home and try and get some documentation on, because there's been a lot of allegations around her and her ministry, now former, because she's just left. So there is some momentum that it builds. It gives some push. And I feel for Central African Republic, and we'll be watching to see that Central African Republic, that the Pope came to a place that he was warned, there's a threat to his security, and he said, I'll go anyway and I'll talk to them, deliver the message. I feel that it will really draw people's, at least if it's not attention, at least some push to do something.
Given the conflict situation in the Central African Republic and the massive security presence there, Masai said that the Pope's stop in that nation was a real highlight of the trip.
Well, for me, this is home, and I have come in touch and in contact with such situations, whether it's poverty, you name it. But moved, yes, I was. When we had to be escorted from the airport, basically wherever we went in Central African Republic, we had UN security. And just to see that, I mean, it's exciting at first, but after a while you feel, I mean, how unsafe is this place for you to have security move around with you? You can't decide to just go around and look around, but I felt, as I told you earlier, we take a lot for granted, so I was moved by that. And in terms of our colleagues, I didn't see anyone move to tears, but I could see probably the stare.
When Pope Benedict XVI stepped down in 2013, he said he wished to pass along the reins of the Church to a successor with the energy to face the challenges of today. And of course, we know what happened then. Today, Benedict lives a monk's life in the Vatican, yet his theology is not retired. It lives on and has yet to be fully discovered. 10 years after the publication of Benedict's first encyclical, Deus Caritas Est, on God's relation of love with the world, it's being revisited. Scholars gathered for 3 days at Rome's Lateran University at the end of November to discuss the contents of this deceivingly small book that contains the fruit of a whole life of theological endeavor. Among those who presented was Italian Cardinal Angelo Scola, an eminent theologian himself. His talk focused on the central theme of the book and the novelty of Benedict's thought on the forms of love known in Greek philosophy: eros, or sexual love, agape, self-sacrificing love, and philia, friendship, and their relationship with the teachings of Christ.
This is definitely the point in which the encyclical Deus Caritas Est has most innovation, because beforehand eros and agape were put in opposition. They were presented as elements that are irreconcilable and incompatible. But Cardinal Ratzinger showed that also the eros, coming from below, has impure elements, encounters agape as something that expresses more profoundly the desire of love, which in this case, man urges for with regards to women. Every one of us lives within a determined sexual difference, and therefore by force of that difference is urged to go out of himself and encounter the other. The bodiliness of man is not just a simple matter, but can become a sacrament, as St. John Paul II says, the expression of the totality of the human person. The human body, in the full understanding of the term, is already a spiritual expression.
Deus Caritas Est touches on today's hot topics, and its teaching is as actual as ever. As such, it has stood up to critiques, which this American Dominican priest and professor has been studying.
The critiques of the encyclical reflect the three revolutions that have affected secular society, especially in the German and English-speaking worlds, since the 1960s. First, the broadly liberationist human rights movement, which the Church in many ways has made her own and has sanctified. However, there exist radical liberationist theorists, as you know, and they push the envelope on what is possible to be liberated from, for example, God's law. Secondly, there were critiques from the feminists, not the Christian feminists, that John Paul II gave impulse to by his encyclical apostolic letter, in fact, Dignitatis Mulieris, but from the secular feminists who felt that the encyclical did not take account of their concerns. And then, sadly, some from the sexual revolution, including the gay revolution, who felt that the encyclical didn't pay enough attention to their concerns.
In the academic sphere, open to broad debate, the proponents outweigh the critics, and Deus Caritas Est is standing the test of time.
But by and large, roughly 70 to 80% of the journal literature that I surveyed, which in fact represents all of the major theological journals in the United States and Australia, the reception was warm.
The conference closed with two highlights. First, the Ratzinger Prize was given. Professor Nabil El-Khouri of Lebanon and Father Mario de Franca Miranda of Brazil received one each. Professor El-Khouri is the translator into Arabic of the life works of Joseph Ratzinger. Another highlight was the presentation of a master's program on the studies and spirituality of Joseph Ratzinger, which will be offered at the Augustinian University beginning in 2016.
This documentary, entitled Land of the Story, attests how Palestinian people live in dramatic conditions under the occupation in East Jerusalem.
Thank you very much for coming.
The film was shown here at the UN Geneva during the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. This Day of Solidarity was commemorated on November 30th at a special meeting held here at the United Nations Geneva. The director of Land of the Story told us that because he is a Palestinian citizen of Gaza origin, he was not allowed to enter Jerusalem. Therefore, his documentary was filmed undercover by Palestinians who live inside the city. UN Geneva Director General Michael Möller quoted UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said tensions related to the holy sites in the old city of Jerusalem had introduced a troubling and dangerous religious dimension to the conflict. But from a Catholic Christian perspective, it was never only about secular issues of territory, injustice and identity, but also a spiritual battle.
Yes, I think definitely there is a spiritual battle that is in the background. The spiritual battle is everywhere in the world, of course, but there with particular intensity and I would say rage, because of course the enemy, the big enemy of man, was defeated there once and forever, and he does express his hate and his rage for this. His time is now limited. He has been defeated once and forever, and that's where it happened.
Mitri Nasrawi was born here in Jerusalem and now finds himself surrounded by settlers. The Israelis had offered him a lot of money to sell his home and move away, but he refused. Jerusalem is my life. I would never think about leaving or immigrating. God forbid. Listen, Jerusalem is in my veins, in my blood. It's absolutely impossible that I abandon it. Whom would I leave it for?
Personally, I've experienced myself how it is difficult to keep your internal peace, your internal objectivity also, if you do not pray for about 4 hours a day when you're in the Holy Land, especially in the long run, and especially if you're interacting with local situations and people.
The UN underlined that even though 136 countries recognize the state of Palestine, the advances are not felt by children in Gaza or by the residents of Nablus, Hebron and East Jerusalem.
I hope that this solidarity with us from all around in the world should breed, at the end of the day, our dream, our goal to right to self-determination and to establish our independent state by ending the occupation and to sign an agreement with the Israelis and to live side by side in peace and security.
I think every Christian feels he has been born there. He has been born in faith. He has been redeemed there. Maybe that's the first thing to say. It's the most important one. So eternally we should be respecting and honoring this place where our redemption was accomplished and where we became again worthy of being sons and daughters of God.
Women and Work was the theme of this international workshop that took place in Rome the first week of December. It was sponsored by the Pontifical Council for the Laity, focusing on the dichotomy between the needs of work and family facing women today.
They don't take account of women's desire to take care of people, especially their children or older people or disabled children. They don't make time for women to do that. They don't reflect the way women would like to act at the workplace in many cases, with the special attention to the person. And so my job will be asking, who is supposedly the enemy today? Sometimes it's ourselves. Sometimes it's a Western version of feminism. Sometimes it's still the man. Sometimes it's our own materialism. Where do we begin with all of that?
The conference wants to be a step on the way to a full inclusion of women in the workplace, especially in the face of discrimination, such as pay disparity, and that faced by mothers in the workplace, in different countries worldwide.
We don't just want to have great ideas, we want to make them action. I think one of the best suggestions that's been made so far today is really grassroots activism on the part of women. Again, we've been in the workforce outside the home for decades now. Why hasn't almost anything changed? I have a group in the United States called Women Speak for Themselves. That's a grassroots action. It needs to be bigger, and we need groups like this everywhere in the world to actually make the public and private policies suit women's priorities, not a workplace designed strictly for men without childcare responsibilities.
This participant and archbishop connected the defense of life with the defense of creation and said that both are intertwined.
We see the necessity of women in their condition can work, but not as an alternative of her natural characteristic, which is the capacity to form a family. There needs to be a new sensibility. This is a great message, which I feel much in my work. The defense of life and the defense of the dignity of man serves for the physical life, but also for the life of the environment. It is vital to have an alliance between the defense for life and the defense for the environment.
The seminar also marked the 20th anniversary of the publication of Pope St. John Paul II's letter to women, in which he spoke about the feminine genius.
Man should look and learn from the sensibility of women with her attention, and the same is true for the woman. This should be emphasized, to emphasize the richness of the female universe, which is not just for the life of the family, but indicated as perspective that is true for the whole life. The attention to woman is vital, not just because she bears forth life and raises children, but also because she introduces a new way in the workplace, a new way to encounter people, and not just reduce them to the ambience.
The Holy Father has often advocated the rights of women to have fair treatment in the workplace, He sent his greetings in a telegram this time, in which he expressed the hope that the symposium will help to affirm the indispensable role of women in the family and the formation of children. Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio, when elected Pope, called himself Francis to show his special relationship to the saint from Assisi. Therefore, it was a special moment for him when on Sunday night he lit a candle. At the same time, this gesture was used to remotely light the Christmas tree and nativity scene in front of St. Francis Basilica in the city of Assisi. At the foot of the tree is a wooden fishing boat used by North African migrants to sail to Lampedusa, Sicily in 2014. Refugees were invited to attend also this Assisi tree ceremony. In a live video link, the Pope told his audience their hearts may be pained, but their heads should be kept high in the hope of the Lord.